Hello and welcome to episode 10 of Biblical Perspectives with Frank Hasel and myself, Chad Stuart. Frank is a theologian, a doctor of theology, and he is an associate director of the Biblical Research Institute at the Seventh Adventist Church. I am a pastor of the Spencerville Seventh Adventist Church. I have the privilege of being Frank's pastor, and in this season 1, we are exploring the topic of what God says about how we are to manage the resources that He has given to us. There's 12 episodes in this season. We are on episode number 10. And today, Frank, I want us to dialogue a little bit about having perspective on our money, especially as life gets into the later stages. We referenced in a previous episode that Jesus talks about money more than almost any other subject in the Bible, in his lifetime in the Gospels. Whether it's directly or sometimes indirectly, there's references to it here and there. And I want us to read one of those stories, and that's in Luke chapter 12, verses 16 through 21. And this is known as the parable of the rich fool. The parable of the rich fool. So, Frank, will you read that for us, this parable? And if you want to pause at any point, feel free to do so. And
All right, so Luke 12, 16 through 21.
Yes.
And he, Jesus, told them a parable, saying, The land of a rich man produced plentiful. And he thought to himself, What shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops. And he said, I will do this. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones. And there I will store all my grain and all my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry. But God said to him, Fool, this night your soul is required of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So is the one who lays up treasures for himself and is not rich toward God.
Frank, Dr. Frank.
Frank is fine.
I know, but I'm saying Dr. Frank because I want you to unpack this parable for us.
Well, I think Jesus gives us some wisdom here.
Yeah.
And the wisdom that he wants to get across is that life might be shorter than we think it is. We usually do not like to think about the end of life, death. We think we will live for quite a while, and this will come later, and we plan our life as if it were in our hands. And he points out, no, you don't know whether you will live through the next day. You don't know what will happen to you. And for that reason, be wise and manage your resources and the things you have in such a way that it honors God and that you store up riches in heaven rather than on earth where they can perish and disappear and you don't have anything to enjoy them.
There's a line in this parable that says, and I will say to my soul, Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry.
Yeah.
This is a very Western mindset. Actually, I don't know if it's a global mindset.
To relax, you mean? Or
No. This idea of like, I worked hard, now I can just chill. I've served the Lord. I've done enough for God. Now I can just chill. Is there a commentary on that too? I mean,
well,
that's part of what Jesus is addressing. You're not rich towards God. You're thinking about saving up so that you can just hang out and enjoy life versus like continuing later in life to use your resources for God?
I have seen many people who have worked hard and saved for their retirement years, and they started their retirement, and shortly after they started their retirement, they got sick or ill, and people died, and they could not enjoy the years that they had worked hard for in the way they had hoped for. So this is just a confirmation of the reality that Jesus points out here. Sometimes people, die much too early. Death does not follow in a chronological order, and it's not that you say, "Oh, my father and my grandparents, they're still alive, so death will not hit me." Who knows?
This is, someone could use this text, though, could they not, and say, "Oh, well, then our job isn't to like prepare for retirement because we don't know when." That's not what this is necessarily saying, though, right? We should still be wise.
Yes.
With our resources.
Yes.
But the purpose of wisdom is the purpose of keeping those resources is so that we can continue to the end of our life serving God and serving others, not so that we can just kick up our feet and say,
Jesus is not talking about being irresponsible in terms of what your future plans are and all that. He's not against retirement planning, I think. But he points out that whatever we do needs to have that perspective with God in mind. Yeah. If that is missing, and that seems to be missing, this person, he was producing for himself, he was gathering riches for himself, and that is foolishness.
Yeah.
We need to have God in mind. We need to have the well-being of other people in mind, our responsibility towards others, and that is missing in the story in that parable with that rich man.
In Matthew chapter 24, Jesus made a comment. Let me get there. Matthew chapter 24. This is of course his last day. Mm-hmm. When the disciples ask what's it going to be like in the last days, and then Jesus or at the time of the destruction of the temple, and Jesus starts to just lay it out. And in 24:44 through 46, he says, "Therefore you also must be ready, for the Son of Man coming at an hour you do not expect. Who then is the faithful and wise servant whom his master has set over his household to give them their food at the proper time? Blessed is that servant whom his master will find so doing when he comes." It seems here Jesus is conveying the idea that we still have a labor, maybe even after we retire, but we still have a labor,
certainly,
as the people of God until the very end.
And he is still active. He is in that particular passage. Jesus is not endorsing idleness. And I think the problem with the rich man in the parable that we just read before is that he lived as if there were no God. He lived as if there is no heaven, as if there is no future, as if all depends on the here and now.
All the joy is right there.
Yes.
Okay.
And that, I think, from a biblical perspective, is foolishness.
Yeah.
Now, people who don't believe in God, they might live like that.
Yeah.
But then you have a different ethics, you have a different priority of things in life, and that perspective of heaven and our responsibility towards God, who is our creator, we talked about that in earlier sessions, that is completely missing.
I had some friends once who, it made me sad because their kids got through with school, they got out of college and everything else, and they verbalized even like, "Oh, now it's our time just to relax." And you saw their spiritual life begin to drift. And even at one point they acknowledged that they had drifted, and they tried to start to come back, but it was this kind of, we've paid for all we need to pay for with our kids, now we can just do our own thing. And there was this lack of focus led into a drifting away from God, and things that they had valued And what happened is they then saw their kids doing the same drift, and they realized that they were conveying the lack of value of what they had raised their kids with because of the way that they were now living as adults, or not as adults,
Yes, yes.
as empty nesters. I think we have that struggle, right?
Yes, and sometimes we also think that that we just have plenty of time.
Yeah.
And I'm just reminded of a word that I heard from my father-in-law. He said, "Frank, just wait until you're 50, and then time flies."
Oh, yeah.
You know, you think you have all the time, but just wait until you hit that mark, you know, and you'll see time is rather short and moves fast. You know, when the younger you are, the longer you think time lasts. You know, it takes for an eternity, you know, and the older you get, the faster time moves, it seems.
It seems so true. It seems so true. I've lived here 8 years, and I think, man, when I moved here, I had a 2-year-old, and now I have all kids in double digits. It's an unbelievable thing. Hey, Frank, there was a couple passages within this context
Sure.
of us thinking about being responsible with our resources and everything as life grows along that you had referenced in our conversation off camera. Ecclesiastes 5:10. Do you want to?
Yes, I'm reading Ecclesiastes 5:10. He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. This also is vanity.
That's good.
And it's true, you know, it's not bad to have money, but if that is your main focus, you will never be satisfied. You will never get enough. I've seen that plenty of times, you know. People, they strive to get rich and they have a nice house. The next thing, they want a second house. They want a bigger house.
Mm-hmm.
They have a nice car. No, it has to be a second car. It has a faster car. It has a more expensive car.
Mm-hmm.
And so it goes. And the more...
Let's even get more personal. You start with an iPhone 7 or 8, and then you get an iPhone.
Yes.
I know I have friends that get a new iPhone every year. Every time a new one comes out,
Yes,
they get the new one.
and I think you know it should make us think whether that is really the goal of everything. And you're in a rat race, trying to satisfy whatever is presented to you in advertisements and the interest of other companies and businesses, and we really need to ask ourselves: is that something that I really need, or is this just something that I want to be to increase my my self-worth, you know, or the appreciation that I receive from other people, or the attention?
Yeah.
And where do I draw that from?
Yeah. So what's that text in Proverbs that what's the one that says, make me neither?
Well, let me see here. No, in Proverbs 30,
Oh, Proverbs 30, okay.
verse 8.
Verse 8, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so yes.
Yeah.
So remove far from me falsehood and lying, but then this is the one we're talking
Yes.
about. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with the food that is needful.
Yes, and I like that, you know, because there's a danger in poverty and there is a danger in riches. And the
Discuss those two dangers.
Well, the danger in poverty is, you know, poverty is terrible. I mean, if you're tempted to do things that are not right, you're tempted to steal, you're tempted to be dishonest in order to gain something to eat, or gain some basic necessary things for living.
As Adventists, we see sometimes people say, I have to work on the Sabbath, otherwise I can't.
Yes.
This temptation that way.
So in poverty, there's a temptation to, over these hardships, lose sight of God and His goodness and His grace and His care for you. And
is there also a danger of coveting towards?
And the danger of
more,
coveting, and we talked about that in a previous session. Yes, and it all is detrimental to your spiritual well-being. And there's also a danger in the riches and wealth, because then you become self-sufficient. You don't need God. And you see that in many modern Western countries who are rich and wealthy. And people, they are not interested in God. Why should I care for God if I can manage my life like this? It's plannable, it's predictable, it's secure. So I'm all set, and people don't need God anymore. And there is a danger in both. And so I think the wise man says, prevent me from being really poor, prevent me from getting too rich, because both can lead me to forget you, God. Give me the things that are really essential. Give me the things that I really need for life. And let me be happy and satisfied and content with that.
Everything about that goes against the American dream.
Well,
No, and I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying, like, I'm raised in a culture where the American dream is more and more and more, and even the teaching sometimes in our culture is that if you have more, it's because God's blessing you more than others, because somehow that's God's.
but you're not satisfied with more,
No,
more,
you're
more.
not.
You're
You
never
always want more.
satisfied. And I think we need to learn to be happy with less. Less is more.
Yeah.
It gives you more quality of life.
Well, be content in all things,
Yes.
right? Learn to be content in all things. Well, Frank, we're continuing this study, looking at biblical perspectives on how God wants us to manage our resources in that He has provided for us. We think of the rich fool. He lived as if there was no God, and I think all these points that you made are giving us good perspective on these resources. We're going to talk in the next one, in episode 11, about managing our resources in the last days. And I think what we're talking about in this one is a preparation for that.
Yes.
This man looked at his life and said, you know what? I'm going to manage so that I can just enjoy my time. Not, hey, this is my life that I'm living for God. Having that right perspective that I'm not to pray for wealth, but rather I'm just to pray for God to provide my needs so that I can serve Him, whatever that may be, whether rich or poor or in between, whatever that may mean. So we'll come back with episode 11, in which we will talk about managing the resources in the last days.